Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the NGO sector, but particularly Oxfam, given that they've released a document recently to give a list of words, which includes a list of words that they won't use anymore, like mother and father, and instead use, birthing, person or something like that. A whole list of, and you couldn't get more woke. I mean, if you went to the most, extreme woke activist you could find in some sort of lesbian gender studies department, they would write that list. So that's kind of how crazy it is, and shows just how much Oxfam and indeed the NGO sector has been taken over by the globalist machine, or has become integrated into it at the very least. Now, I'm going to go back some years to when I was, in my, I suppose, early to mid-20s, and this is something I've mentioned before. There was a lot of propaganda around about violent men oppressing women, how all women were being, violently oppressed in their marriages and relationships with men, and that it was a pandemic of violence against women, and that something had to be done. Women had to leave marriages. The marriage institution had to be changed. So this was sort of the earlier assault, one of the earlier assaults on the marriage and the family and all that sort of stuff, which again is very much part of the globalist shtick, and was indeed part of the communist Marxist revolution. The family was viewed as an obstacle to complete and total state power. So, and it's still viewed as an obstacle, and there's still, a lot of effort. Instead of attacking, that all men are violent, that's sort of, they've used that one up a little bit. So they're attacking through other means, through gay, lesbian marriages, transgender. So the assault continues, to sexualizing children and turning the children against the parents, those sorts of things. That's all part of the Destroy the Family program that the government has, the intermediate and final say about what happens to children, what they're allowed to read and not read, and that sort of thing, what activism they're supposed to be exposed to. Now, I remember the early editorials that were saying women are oppressed all over them, violently beaten and so on. And Oxfam was certainly very prominent in that. There was always a study by Oxfam, and they'd be presented as this impartial, independent organization that only did good, that only wanted to do good, that only intended to do good. And they helped starving children in Africa, so they got to be morally pure. And so their so-called studies were being put out. Now, I noticed how consistent, as a young man, how consistent they were in saying that all men are violent, and coming out with some incredible statistics that about murders and rapes and beatings and so on that were just it seemed quite incredible. So after sort of seeing this for a little bit and just seeing how much and then like a politician would come out and say, well, the Oxfam has said that all women, and I'm going to bring out a law that's going to stop these men from being bad. And then they'd invariably produce this woman from somewhere who said that she was an abused wife. And so it was all a very round robin, very stage managed bit of propaganda. Now, I decided at one point I'm going to do some chasing here, and I found that the woman that they brought up as the poor abused woman was an actress. Wasn't an abused person at all. In the town hall forums that the government was supposedly holding, and various NGOs were holding, the people in yours getting up, yeah, my daughter was beaten to death by her fucking husband. Yeah, this is a real problem everywhere. Yeah, my daughter was as well. Yeah, my sister was murdered 10 times by her fucking husband. And all these, so I thought, wow, how come all these people turn up with all these sort of what seemed to be very scripted stories and very emotional? The delivery was was all very, very, they just seemed far too contrived to me. So I started chasing some of them, and they were actors planted in the crowds with invented stories. Now, if the problem is as bad as you say it is, you don't need to put actors, you don't need to bring women on stage who are actresses and say that they were beaten. You don't need to put men in the audience or other women say it was their sister or their daughters and so on. You don't need to do that if the problem is as big as they say. So I was in the US one time. They managed to quote somebody in Oxfam, and there was an office, I think it was Los Angeles or San Francisco. It was on the West Coast, an Oxfam office, and somebody in the Oxfam office. So I actually did wear out some shoe leather and thought I'll just make an inquiry, because it just seemed like a pack of lies to me. But maybe it was real. I mean, even as a young man, I was looking at it thinking, again, I'm in my mid-20s, so this just doesn't look right. Why are they trying so hard to tell so many lies? Why would they do that? Now, this is from the standpoint of someone who believes in the system. I believe in the politicians. I believe in the independent courts. I believe in everything. I have confidence, pretty much complete confidence in all our institutions. So I think, well, it can't be malicious. They can't be intending to do this. It must just be a mistake. Maybe there's a rogue element in somewhere, and well-meaning people have been sucked in and deceived without really understanding it. Maybe people have been trusted to do studies and reports and research, but in fact they have rogue elements there. But if the people who make the decisions knew about it, then they would correct their behavior. They wouldn't be attacking the family like this if they knew that the information they were relying on was false. That's what I thought. I mean, more naive and silly me. So I actually managed to go to the Oxfam office, and the person that did it was actually a academic at a university, did the so-called study of all men of violence type thing. So, and they were pleasant enough. I mean, a little bit suspicious of what do you want to know for, but otherwise it's, well, that's and so I made further inquiries. Now that turned out to be a very angry lesbian activist in a gender studies department, who had been on a research trip to a refugee camp in a civil war torn country that was mayhem and bedlam in all directions. And she'd done that anecdotal report that all women were being beaten and raped every day. Now, in a civil war, tribal civil war, which is very vicious, by the way, in Africa, third world basket case, third world country in the middle of a tribal civil war, there's going to be a lot of violence there, and so, but even that wasn't quantified. It was just seen as I don't know what you'd call it. It was, well, again, anecdotal. That's what it was. And these women are offered gifts if they come to the to this like a little tent or research tent, whatever it was, to come and say, "Yep, I was beaten and abused. Good, as a gift for you." So they can come up with some astonishing numbers here. There's no proof or evidence. No one chases it up or whatever. So so this very angry, Bush dyke lesbian who's committed to the destruction of the family, an absolute through and through Marxist, hates all heterosexual men, believes all marriage is oppression, believes consensual adult intimate relations is oppression, and so on. So we're talking a hysterical ideologue here. Then comes back from this African place with this report that says that 53% of all women are raped and 72% are murdered and killed. Or it's these incredible stats. Now maybe they're closer to some sort of accuracy and have some sort of factual basis, even if it's second or third hand, because you're in a dirt poor basket case country where people die at the age of 40 anyway. There are the children, mortality rate of children is like 30%. I mean, these are people that live with death every minute of every day, and without sort of thinking twice about it. So So they live in a completely different environment than we do in the nice middle class houses of the West. So she gets this, then compiles a report, which then is disingenuously used by a number of NGOs, incidentally, disingenuously used and then released to the media. And the media pitch it in the United States, and they do this in Australia too. They pitch it as if it's happening in a first world country. They don't say that this is anecdotal evidence from a third world basket case shithole in the middle of civil. They don't say that. They just say, 53% of women are raped every day, 72% are beaten, and so they come up with these insane statistics, and you look at it and go, holy shit. But there's no mention that it's from Africa, no mention the circumstance of the situation, and no mention it's anecdotal. It's passed off as a peer-reviewed study, and doesn't state directly, but it given that there's no mention of Africa or refugee camps or civil wars, the inference, given it's appearing in this case an American newspaper, the inference is that this is happening in America, and then these activist lesbian academics then cross quote and cross reference each other. So again, giving the impression that it's all very very studious, very accurate, very intensively reviewed piece of statistics, but it's nothing of the sort. So this was the beginning that when I noticed, this is again, sort of late 1980s, early 1990s, around there, that I noticed that the NGOs were increasingly moving away from doing, good charity work, which is what was meant to be what they were supposed to be doing, and moving into the world of activism and pushing social engineering issues, and of course, as today we see, woke issues. But this has been a process in train for probably 40 years, if not a bit more. And now these NGOs are an integral part of the mass migration movement, an integral part of getting people from the third world to the first world, an integral part of distributing propaganda, and of putting, of money laundering, and of putting activists into refugee camps, campuses, and so on. I mean, do you think that the students that go and scream and carry on about Charlie Kirk making a speech at a university or something like that, that's just some natural organic thing? It's nothing to do with the sort. Activists, especially brought in, professional activists, especially brought in to stir up the crowd and lay out the architecture of how they're going to go about disrupting the conservatives. But this is all part of the NGO sector now, and the jobs of the NGO sector, which used to pay, very badly compared to the private sector generally. Now the best paid jobs in Australia are, many of those best paid jobs are jobs with NGOs. That just goes to show you now what an important role the NGOs now play in implementing and enabling and enforcing the globalist project. Being Tassos today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.